We are recording. Excellent. All right. For those who are just joining us, we're going to leave a few minutes here to let a few people log on. So hang with us and we'll get into it soon. All right, we're going to give it probably 1 or 2 more minutes here, give people a chance to hop on. Maybe 1 more minute. All right, I think we'll let's get things going. Let's get it started. A few more people will probably be filtering in, but yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Kevin Baum. I'm one of the co-founders of AgriWebb, and I'm really excited about our session today. We've got an awesome panel and I think a great topic, and people with great experience and different perspectives on this. So really looking forward to it. As a quick background, for those who don't know who AgriWebb is, we build end-to-end ranch management solutions focused on helping ranchers use data to improve their bottom line. Our business was founded by ranchers, and so we're really focused on how do we make life easier for ranchers, how do we improve their businesses. And as most people on this call know, ranching is an industry that is under pressure. There are a lot of challenges. They come from the elements, they come from commodity prices, and they come from consumers themselves. You know, keeping up with changing consumer habits is challenging, and it can be really daunting, but it can also be a really big opportunity. And so the point of today's panel is to shed some light on how value-added producer programs and how they can actually have a measurable operational, but also, most importantly, a financial benefit to leading ranchers. And so we're really excited to dive in. We've got a couple of key topics we're going to cover tonight. We're going to be looking at those consumer demands I just spoke of, how they're impacting, you know, the value-added program landscape, what programs exist, and you know, they're more relevant than ever before. And so giving an overview of the program landscape, and finally hearing from you know, a really successful ranch that's implementing these practices, and what are the financial benefits? What is actually happening practically to improve their business? But I know that nobody's here to hear me talk, so I'm going to turn it over to the main event. We've got some amazing guests, as I said, from Tyson Foods, who needs no introduction, the second biggest processor and marketer of beef, pork, and chicken globally. We've got Where Foods Come From Incorporated, the largest provider of certification and verification services in the food industry. And Sunfed Ranch, an amazing, innovative ranching organization with operations in Nebraska and California. And I think, as I said, these three panelists bring each different perspective to this conversation, but they're all leading the charge in terms of these producer programs. And we're really excited to hear what they have to say. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to the panelists to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Lori, shift to Neville, and then finish up with Bob.
Well, thank you. So I work with Sunfed Ranch. I've been working with them for going on 5 years. I am the director of ranching operations. It is a grass-fed beef operation. I live in Woodland, California. Our main office is located here. As Kevin said, we have several ranches in different places: California, Southern Oregon, and Nebraska. Sunfed has about 100,000 acres that are utilized today, with direct oversight of over half of that.
Thank you, Lori. Neville, do you want to introduce yourself?
You bet. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm Neville Scheer, and I serve as Director of Industry Relations for Where Food Comes From, and I'll talk about this a little more in detail, but we have a 25-year history in the industry, and we are the largest provider of third-party verification of the various companies that are out there. And I'm based in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Our headquarters are in Castle Rock, Colorado, but I'm just about an hour north of Nashville, and have worked with IMI, or Where Food Comes From, in various roles for probably the last 15 years or so.
Excellent. Thank you. And Bob?
My name is Bob Scheer. I'm Associate Director for Tyson Fresh Meats. I've been with the company 40 years. Started out as an hourly, and today run our natural programs as well as our NHTC. I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm thankful for every rancher out there for what Mother Nature has been dealing a bad hand of cards here over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. And so we're going to touch a lot of topics. We're going to hit it quick. Hopefully we can get a lot of questions answered by the end of the night.
Absolutely. So as a quick run sheet and some ground rules, so Neville and Bob have prepared some short presentations that are going to cover topics on consumer trends, overview of the value-added programs, and how ranchers can benefit. Then we want to turn it over a little bit to Lori and hear about her experiences with these programs, and how Sunfed has been able to grow their business, and what the challenges and some practical advice from Lori on execution. And then we want to open it up to questions. We've had some fantastic questions submitted in advance, so thank you to everyone who's put that out there. It really helps us direct where we want the conversation to go. But keep adding questions. Please use the Q&A function to add more questions in. We'll be moderating and trying to get to as many of them as humanly possible. We will keep all attendees on mute during the panel, but definitely want to hear from you at the Q&A side. And yeah, the goal of this is just to have a great conversation. We want everyone to be participating. So those are the rules. And I guess what we want to do is we're going to kick off with Bob. And so Bob, I know that Tyson had a pretty big announcement back in September. And so maybe we could start by talking through that, what Tyson is doing in this space, and then maybe get your view on some of the consumer trends that are shaping the industry and where they're headed.
So when we announced back in September our full support of IMI's Beef Care, we looked at the 3 pillars of the program itself: animal well-being, animal welfare, sustainability, and people and community. And to us at Tyson, that is the driver. I mean, that aligns with our core values. It aligns with our customer creed. And it's about doing what's right, not only for the environment, for the animals, but the people that work for us and the communities we're involved with. I cannot be a larger supporter in any mean possible. It's the foundation of what we do as an industry today. And when we look at it and we look at Beef Care, how does that tie in to, say, a premium program structure? So we would look at, what does Tyson do? How can we help incentivize the ranchers, incentivize the finished feed yards? And the greatest opportunity there is look at the programs. We all raise cattle, we all sell calves. But at the end of that sale, do we really know what we are producing day in and day out? We all want to believe we are producing the best animal out there. And I truly believe that. But getting into the premium programs, it gives you the opportunity to get some of that data back and understand the importance or your genetics as to exactly what you were raising and how that can impact your bottom line. So when we look at the programs today, you know, we talk about premium programs a lot, and I am heavily involved in that. So we look at the GAP certification. Anything under the sun can basically be certified for GAP, be it poultry, be it fish, be it whatever, beef. And the crazy part is that is the management standards on that ranch, okay? CARE takes it a little deeper. It is a rancher written program for ranchers. And Beef Care drives that opportunity. Mother Nature is not always going to give you X amount of months to wean your cattle. We understand that. Mother Nature dictates 99% of what we do. And as we look at today, you know, West River, what I would call West River, everything west of Missouri is doggone dry. And that is not a good scenario for what we're looking at in the marketplace today. So we look at the GAP, we look at the verified natural, we look at NHTC, and we simply look at source and age. It's an opportunity to get that marbling call, that ribeye size, that back fat, all those quality grade attributes back, and understand exactly what your bull production looks like, your cow production looks like, and then you're looking for a sweet spot and where to get that. The quality of the animal itself, today's genetics are phenomenal. I mean, if you went back 20 years ago, we couldn't, as an industry, we couldn't break 55% grading, which is absolutely ridiculous. Today we have plants that on some days will run 40% prime, which is astronomical. And that's a major compliment back to the ranching industry. So in our programs, we look at the opportunities. And if any of you have followed, say, the Superior, the Western, the Northern videos, and take a good look at what the conventional price brings versus what the attribute programs bring, on average, 2020, verified natural with CARE, about $13.60 a hundredweight over a conventional sale price. GAP cattle, $15 to $20 over a conventional GAP price. NHTC, on average, about $5.40 a hundredweight over a conventional animal. It's the opportunity to value up And you guys are doing 95% of that. It's comes down to a little record keeping. And it comes down to, like in our program for Tyson, it's 100% vegetarian diet, which means no animal byproduct. Those are the opportunities out there. Keeping that calving book up to date. Keeping animal byproducts out of your creep feeders. It's the little things and the nuances that create more value for your bottom line on your ranching operation, as well as repeat business. Once a finished feeder gets a set of cattle, understands their health and nutrition, how the cattle have been cared for, delivered to their backgrounder or their stocker operation, to the finish yard, look at their closeout. And the repeat business, you just went from getting a bid, maybe $14 over the market per hundredweight. But now you have competition because a lot of people in this industry, it's such a small world, news travels fast. So if somebody sees a great set of cattle, they happen to be talking about a closeout on the cattle. Now all of a sudden the bidding war begins. And believe me, with what Mother Nature has dealt us coming into this year with the lack of moisture and the drought conditions we're facing, health and nutrition is priority one for your calves and your cows. But more importantly, how do I value that up? And these programs are the avenue to get you there. Over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, the leverage will be extremely shifted from what we are seeing currently today. Meaning the cow calf, the finish feeder is going to have all the leverage. Don't worry about the packer. We've been practicing for 60 years. We'll continue to work to increase and do whatever we can to keep that margin. But this is your time to shine. And I've talked to people in Kentucky. I've talked to people in Tennessee, talked to people on the East Coast, New Mexico, California, all over the US. Believe me, take the advantage of the leverage. It's coming, make it work for you. You know, one of the big things about our program is we believe in traceability. And it's not to say what you have on your ranch or what you feel you should share or not share. It's more about the safety of our industry. A recall today will take this industry down to its knees, especially if it's on an export item. And we cannot afford that because you're currently looking at when corn was normal priced at $3.80 or whatever, you had about $350 worth of export value in that carcass, with where corn is projected to be in the fall, where the dry matter cost is projected to go all the way through the summer into the fall. And the production of calves and the cost involved, you're probably looking at double the value of export opportunity. That all shows up when you market these cattle under the programs. And I'm telling you, I cannot stress this enough. Take advantage of the leverage. It's coming and it's going to be here a while because $7 corn takes 2 crops to get it back in line. And if I'm a row crop farmer, I want to see it for 10 years. If I'm a cow calf or a finish feeder, I want to see it change tomorrow, believe me. And I fully understand that. So how do we talk about, say, Tyson's program? We're an Angus based or an Angus sired program, be it black Angus, be it red Angus. We accept black baldies, red baldies. We will also take anything sired by a red Angus or a black Angus, meaning Scheer crosses, limb flex, you name it, on commercial cows. This is a great opportunity for multiple breeds out there in associations to look at. In fact, I just had conversation the other day with the Verified Red Angus group. It's a small association that has huge attributes that no other animal out there can compete with. Take advantage of it. This is your opportunity. We talk about traceability a little bit more. But let's get into potential growth. Where do we see we're going with the industry? You know, if you would have been back in 2008, everybody would have said, this is a niche program. It's going to last maybe 6 months to a year. The only thing that has changed in 2008 with a 38,000, 2010, 48,000 head harvest of natural cattle. Today, we're just under 200,000. And we expect 6 to 10% growth in this industry year over year. The card that Mother Nature dealt us this last year and a half with COVID was a good thing. It educated every homeowner how to grill a steak properly. And believe me, if you went back 10 years ago, we're buying choice. We wanted a CAB product. That was our goal. 5 years ago, if we're buying CAB, we wanted a prime product. Today, the venues have changed. We have more disposable income. We're going after the natural, the organics, that we understand how the animal was raised, how it was cared for, where that food comes from. And the idea of no antibiotics, no implants, no use of technology. I understand there has to be judicial use for antibiotics. Last thing we want is to lose an animal anywhere in the process. The huge opportunity here is, and what the consumer is driving and telling us, that over the course of the next 5 years, that 6 to 10% growth is going to continue. And the opportunities are huge.
Absolutely. Take advantage of the opportunities. It's fantastic sentiment. So maybe now we can turn it over to your partner, Dr. Neville Scheer, to talk about what are those opportunities? What exists out there, and what should producers know about them, and how do they get started?
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I'm gonna, you make sure I do this correctly, okay? So I'm gonna show some slides, and hopefully this goes okay. It's always the challenge. So are you seeing my slides? There we go. Is that it?
Not yet. I don't. You had the share screen, the big green share screen button at the bottom.
Yeah. Let's see. Did I not? Huh. There we go.
There we
Okay,
go.
how about now?
Awesome. There we go. Perfect. There we go.
Yes. Okay. Well, my apologies. So anyway, I thank you very much. And Bob, good job teeing us up. And I think Bob touched on a lot of really important issues. And ultimately, Kevin, you mentioned it earlier, right? It's really about consumers. And what I want to do is make sure that I kind of talk about this at a very high level and really address the why of why we do what we do. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details tonight about how verification programs work necessarily, because that ultimately is really a ranch to ranch sort of thing. And we have customer verification specialists that work with each rancher. It's very much a priority to us that we create relationships between our specialists and the rancher, and ultimately we walk through that with you. And as Bob said, a lot of ranchers are already doing this, so pretty straightforward. Just to sort of highlight who we are very quickly, we have a 25-year history in the beef industry, and ultimately the company was created to connect producers with consumers, and ultimately to tell their story and talk about where food comes from. That's really why we exist. And ultimately, as Bob talked about CARE, that was launched in 2019, and I'm going to touch on that in just a little bit, but we'll get there. But just to kind of give you some background, and this is very long storied company that's now publicly traded and available on the NASDAQ. So I think it's important as we talk about why do we do what we do and where do we go with this. Transparency is very important to consumers. We see it as a priority, and Bob mentioned the importance of a recall and what it costs, and not only there's that whole product and actual tangible cost, but it's also the intangibles. It's the loss of brand equity, it's the loss of trust, and what have you. And you know, it's interesting, if you ask consumers ultimately who's responsible for that, they'll say it's manufacturers and or brands, but who do they trust to implement transparency? It's farmers and ranchers, right? It really has to be a bottom up and sort of forward driven kind of process in order for consumers to really trust the story that's going on behind the food. And that's ultimately where we're trying to go. So, you know, Bob mentioned a couple of the programs, and I'm just going to highlight 3 of them here. And the very basic that we start with is source and age. It's relatively straightforward. And I think Bob mentioned the calving book, and that's the easiest one to do. And it's a desk audit only. I think over on the other side of it, the most complex and also the most beneficial, and the one that's also in highest demand, Bob mentioned that 6 to 10% growth year over year for the next 5 to 10 years, is verified natural beef. And ultimately, those are the calls that we get most commonly. That's where the interest is, and that's really where consumers are. The nice thing about it is that most cattle, if they're sourced out of the United States, can qualify for natural programs. And then if in the case that they get sick, they can fall back into an NHTC program. And we're anticipating some growth in that as Europe begins to open up. All of that product ultimately is destined for Europe and or China. And we see some potential for that opening up as Europe begins to kind of hopefully get going again in terms of their economy and what have you. But clearly, really the emphasis and the growth opportunities are on the natural side. And again, as Bob said, a lot of producers are already doing this. And there's some real premiums. And I didn't include 2020 in these averages because we all know that 2020 was a little bit of an odd year in terms of marketing, but actually all of those premiums were higher in 2020. But this just gives you some idea. These are averages over 3 years and averages throughout the year. So really removing some of the seasonal differences. And I think Bob would tell you that clearly the biggest demand for natural cattle comes about this time of year, right in front of grilling season. And so cattle that can go to the feed yard ahead of that time and be timed into that just right actually are going to demand a bigger premium. And that's much of what we see is greater demand for actually fall-born calves that could fit that market pretty easily. So these are premiums for a 6 to 6.5 weight steer, and these all would be through Superior and Western Video. And again, they certainly pay, and your time is well rewarded and some effort. And I think most producers would tell you that yes, the first year is probably the hardest, but there's also an additional benefit that once you really begin to kind of do this, you begin to pay attention to other things, and actually your management practices begin to improve in other ways that you don't foresee. And typically we have very loyal customers that once they start doing this, they never go back. So there is definite opportunity out there. So just to then very quickly kind of follow back up in what Kevin mentioned earlier, right? Consumers are fickle, and they're challenging, and they're certainly changing. And I just want to highlight 2 slides here from some of the Power of Meat surveys from 2020. And I think what's most important to see here is that there is a definite trend to be, as we get into younger consumers, that they are increasingly negative or skeptical of animal agriculture, right? So the question is, ranchers take measures to minimize impact of animal farming on environment, agree or disagree, and the strongest disagreement is in the youngest, the Gen Z, and there's a pretty straight linear trend there as we get into older generations. But most important is those Gen Z consumers are our future customers. And so we have to do everything we can to build loyalty with them today. And what's interesting is actually that number in 2021 turned negative. So there was actually fewer yeses in 2021 versus 2020. So we've got some work to do to continue to sell product and keep it moving and tell our story. And I think we have a really good story to tell. You see the same kind of trend if you ask consumers about animal welfare. Is it good or sufficient or satisfactory? And again, you know, it's that time trend, generational trend that's increasingly negative as we get, or skeptical perhaps, as we get into younger generations. And again, that's where we need to really be very active and proactive about telling our story. And that's where ultimately care comes in. It's all about transparency, husbandry, stewardship, philanthropy, integrity. And, you know, it's really where we want to be authentic. And as Bob mentioned so well, is that it's a bottom-up program. It's producer driven, it's rancher written, it's very adaptable to what's going on. And for example, this year, clearly we've got a lot of areas that are covered with drought. It's flexible to meet that, and yet still has some teeth in it, and really does tell an important story to consumers about what we do and who we are as an industry, and continue to try to make that connection between producers and consumers as we go forward. So I think just, you know, kind of to sum this up, and as we talk about all this, and what I'm really looking forward to are the questions later, but typically when I go out and do producer meetings, and certainly when I worked at the university, it seemed inevitable that always the question would be is what's the market going to be? And typically that was a very narrow and kind of short-term view, and I increasingly saw that as that's just doing what we've always done. And you become really subject to a lot of things that are not in your control. And so ultimately, I think the right questions is what's the business environment telling us? And then how do we kind of make our management decisions around those signals? And then, and again, also continue to hunt, where do new opportunities lie? And this is an industry full of opportunity, right? There's lots of challenges, but along with that, there's lots of opportunities. And for example, we can look at these younger consumers who are cynical or skeptical. We can also say, well, there's opportunities there. We can build trust. And once we have them, they'll stay loyal. And then along with that, I think one of the keys, and this is really important, and I mentioned it earlier, right, is once we improve our record keeping, we like those benefits. And, you know, so the question is, what are you measuring? How are you adjusting? And are you connecting the dots correctly? And I think that's ultimately our excitement about some of the things that AgriWebb has to provide, right? Are you measuring the correct things? Are you making knowledge-based decisions? Are you removing emotion from what you're doing, and ultimately kind of being data-driven and being objective? And so I think that kind of relationship, that platform, along with these producer-driven programs, really fit together very, very nicely, and help us kind of navigate through the industry, and ultimately kind of become more resilient. And you know, we know that things are going to come. And if you know, we've seen lots of things happen in the last couple of years, and, you know, you never know what's next behind COVID. And this industry has taken a lot of hits over the last 20 years. And, you know, let's just start with BSE or what have you, but we have to build around our business, or our individual businesses, the ranching business, you know, some ability to be resilient, to kind of have some shock absorbers. And I think these things fit together really nicely. So with that, I will then ultimately turn it back over, and
Yeah.
we'll
No,
let Lori run. Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Kevin.
you. Thank you for that, Neville. Appreciate that as extremely insightful. And yeah, now I think we do want to turn it over to Lori as someone who, has a fantastic business that is reacting to this changing environment. It'd be great to hear from you, Lori. Why did you join these programs and what benefits have you seen and just sort of walk through that experience for us.
Yeah, sure. No, and I appreciate your guys' insights. Bear with me. I'm a little new to this, so a little more comfortable looking at cattle than talking in front of this, but no, so it's darn sure we've got a lot of certificates. Sunfed founders are two guys. They're 5th-generation ranchers, and they kind of saw a demand for more insight into what actually goes into raising cattle from both the buyer and the consumer. As far as the requirements, for us, it's an ever revolving target. We, especially as the consumers continue to evaluate what they want to eat and they want more clarity into how our animals are being raised. So getting ourselves set up for certification was an adjustment to our operation. I mean, in the beginning, and Norval's covered it, it's kind of a mindset change. There was a lot of, we've always done it this way. It's kind of hard to record. We don't have time. It's a hassle on the animals. So we had some growing pains coming up with solutions to make something we could incorporate at the cowboy level. I mean, and admittedly today, and I actually just got an email from one of my cowboys just saying, hey, you know what? We just went ahead and put EIDs on these guys because we like tracking the data and seeing what's going on. And so we're darn sure making some inroads. So I admit a lot of our certifications require a lot more paperwork and resources. So getting over that hurdle about that we can make this happen and it isn't going to be super painful has taken us a little while to get there. Today, we actually are certified SAV, NHTC, natural. All of our cattle are ABF. Got some organics. We're certified humane. We're GAP 4, and we're working on non-GMO and savory. So got a lot going on.
That is a huge amount going on. How did you, so obviously it was a challenge, like I think it was Neville who said earlier that first year is the toughest year, and it sounds like that was a similar experience for you. But what has changed in your business? The key to this, like Neville said, was improving record keeping. So what has changed to make that happen? And yes, there was a mental hump. Is there anything else you're doing operationally to make that easier on you?
Yeah, I mean, so what I think our biggest thing we made up our mind it's going to happen. And then it's how can we make traceability happen where it's user friendly, because gosh dang, you get to a spot and we're there where you can't, I mean, I can darn sure assist, but I can't keep it all going myself. So we all have to work together on it. So the thing that's been super nice is, I mean, we've done some stepping, but today we utilize AgriWebb software program. What's nice about it is we can track both our cattle and some of our ranches grazing availability. It's allowing us to kind of grow our inventory in a streamlined manner. And what's nice, I mean, I can literally pull up my phone and tell you what our cattle weighed on their way to the plant, who are the sources, what were their average daily gains, gosh dang, how many bales of hay have they had in their adventure with us, because we typically buy stockers. So it's been pretty helpful. We had a USDA lady that had worked for us that kind of, I mean, it was her full-time job, tracking animals and kind of walking us through our audits. COVID kind of turned some things around for her, so she had to spend quite a bit more time at home. And so I've always kind of helped with the processes of the audit. I've helped with our SOPs and our systems. I went through 4 audits a month ago and was pretty much able to utilize our databases and our systems. I can walk out with an auditor, look at an animal and pull it up on my phone and let them know, hey, this is where we bought it. This is what we paid for it. This is what he should weigh. Here's all of the certificates that go with him before we purchased him. And it has just streamlined our traceability. And we know, I mean, it's nice. I can pretty much tell you 100% of all of our animals, where they are and what's going on in their life, with the added benefit of telling you about what they weigh and when they're ready to be marketed. So it's been pretty good.
Excellent. So yeah, as we were saying, there's operational benefits as well as just helping with the compliance and the bottom line. Um,
No, for sure.
on the bottom line, we've talked about, the costs and the burdens and how you've been able to overcome that. What about the positive side? What has been the ROI, for your business by bringing on? I mean, that's a lot of certifications. So what are you getting out the
No,
back
for
of that?
sure. No, and I think a lot of our certificates are driven by what our consumer wants. So whether it be, and it's like you guys talk about, we care. Gosh dang, another company may use certified humane, and they're all nuances of each other. And it is a validation, which you guys have pointed out, of the processes a lot of us do anyway. So, but it does take more time, and that would be, it's definitely more time and definitely a mindset. But for us, we receive a premium for our animals, and a pretty decent premium. We're able to cross market into any majority, all kinds of types of buyers, which puts us in a really good spot to claim a high premium on our animals. And I do admit, once you get through a certification, especially organic, the rest of it kind of falls into place. It's pretty easy once your processes are put together. I mean, as far as an ROI, it kind of depends on where the animal is, but we can utilize some of our certificates to help, buyers sell our animal any direction they'd like to go. And we verify that it's a high quality product. We verify that what we say we're doing is true. It's just, I guess it's somebody else walking in and saying, you know what, you guys do it right. And it's just a verification of a lot of processes we do anyway. So.
And maybe on that, obviously you're pretty advanced at this stage, and maybe this is for Lori, but also for the rest of the panel is, where would you start if you were a producer out there who, was interested in this, but, weren't sure where to get started? How would you, through your experience, how would you think about that?
No, and I mean, being honest, it's like, gosh dang, I've had the crash course on some of this, and so gone through a lot of it. I mean, I think the ones that Bob brought up and the ones that Neville brought up I think a lot of producers I talked to today aren't using any hormone therapy, judiciously using antibiotics to something that needs to be treated. I think that a lot of guys that I know have 40, 50 head or have smaller herds. It's not, I think that the basic, it's as simple as putting a tag in an animal's ear, and 1 through 40 or 1 through 100. A lot of these guys know the animals are doing a lot of the practices. It's just verifying behind it. And gosh dang it, for the cost of an EID and a little bit of paperwork, there's a big demand for the animals out there. I mean, those are the easy ones. It gets a little more complicated, and it's, as you add more to it. But we've been fortunate working with AgriWebb, and they've been great. We've been able to build like a lot of things together because we go all the way, and we have a lot of programs. It's been pretty good for us to I can feel really comfortable today how our animals are. And I think the bottom line is I know they're eating well. I know what they're gaining. We know what genetics are doing, we know what producers are doing, what. There's so many things to be gained, even going deeper, but to just start, the SAV, NHTC, Natural Verifier, IMI is great to work with. They're pretty simple programs. Generally, the people you get with IMI are little ranch background, so super helpful. We'll walk you through the steps. So I'm a fan. So I think it does. It just, times are just getting harder. So harder to get more money for them.
Kevin, can I jump in here just real quickly?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important here too, and Lori said it really well, it's cross marketing, right? You have opportunities to cross market when you have various verifications. I think the other thing that's really important is that program cattle, you also are going to be able to market them consistently. There's always a pull for those cattle, and I think Bob can talk to this, right? Through COVID, commodity cattle got slowed down, but the program cattle, they're going to be consistently harvested, and so that creates pull on the other side. And ultimately, we saw that our feed yards that were feeding program cattle, the marketing never stopped.
Yeah, right. Bob,
Yeah,
any thoughts?
you're exactly right there, Neville. We looked at the value and the total value investment on these animals in these programs. And maybe I'm a little selfish, but I can guarantee you, when you have these amount of animals on inventory 12 months to 18 months out, that's a lot of equity just out grazing. And as a company, we decided we're going to harvest these premium programs first and foremost, unfortunately, and then into the commodity cattle. The great thing about it is we all know as an industry, we have to feed the world. In these programs, we're just going after a little bit different clientele. Somebody who is a little more in tuned and concerned with where their food comes from, how that animal was treated, what was that animal given, what are the attributes of the programs, be it natural, be it organic, it doesn't matter. The people, the consumer, the end user, this is what they're demanding. And we have to follow what the consumer drives to us day in and day out as an industry.
A quick question. Lori, Sunfed, well, for everyone, I guess, but Sunfed is a decent sized operation. Multiple ranches. And what about for a smaller ranch or a family ranch? Do you think these programs are accessible there? And I guess what's your take on this for some of the smaller operators out there? Can they handle this kind of load?
No, and I strongly encourage it. I mean, because I know that, like, I've heard bonds get expensive or things get expensive, but gosh dang, I also know people that you can buy. I mean, and I imagine Neville can cover this because I understand just enough to be dangerous. Is you can buy a prepackaged, here you go, here's all your EIDs, here's your visual IDs that go with it, here's your Excel spreadsheet already set up or your hand paper spread up. For the value you get, I don't think it doesn't take a whole lot to pay back. I mean, you extrapolate the extra $20 premium you get by just doing SAV and natural and NHTC across your herd. You've paid for that with about 4 animals. So I definitely say it's well worth it.
Yeah, for sure. It generally,
I think it's where the industry's going.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And we've never had producers that say, well, this wasn't worth it, right? That's why they come back year after year. And the first year's the hardest, but after that, they go, wow, this really paid for itself. And so there is real opportunity out there on the other side, for sure.
And I think it's one of the few ways people can help. The market's so volatile, to help kind of control the market a little bit, because your cows aren't want them to go away. And you throw on drought and price of hay and a lot of other stuff that we have going on. It's running cattle in California is not cheap. So any opportunity to get the maximum amount of value out of your animals, I mean, I think that's what we're here to try to do, is just give all those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting over, we're coming up about 10 minutes left in the session, and we did say we wanted to make sure that we got through to some of the Q&A questions. I see there's a few on here. Thank you to Bob for bashing out some quick responses, but maybe something we wanted to bring up to the broader audience. So first question was, Bob, you mentioned some of the increased value of cattle that qualify for value-added programs like GAP, NHTC, et cetera. In comparison to your typical commodity cattle, is there a place where we can see those spreads?
Yeah, so what I tied back to everybody on there was, you can get on and you can look at the sale results from the video sales, be it Superior, be it Western, be it Northern. June 1, these sales really take off and we have a big summer run. And you can notice the difference between a conventional ranch animal and a premium program animal. And like Neville put up over a 3-year period, the 2020 results I gave earlier, 21 is building the same way, and 22, 23, 24, 25. It's an ever growing part of our industry. And back to what Lori said, about the smaller producer, most definitely. We have finished feeders with 30 head, and we have finished feeders who provide us with 30,000 head. If you see the opportunity, you believe this is the right way to do business and the right way to garner a premium on these animals, definitely take advantage of it. And like I said, the leverage is about to turn. So I would really consider talking with people from IMI, talking with people with Allflex, put in the EIDs, get into the programs, take advantage of this. It's going to be huge, and it should be a hell of a ride for a lot of people.
I just one more thing too. I want to reiterate that Bob said earlier. The positive thing for the beef industry that COVID provided is that it got people at home grilling steaks that they've never been able to grill before. And by the way, they began to then pay a lot more attention to quality, and then also their interest in story. And so these things all fit together. But I don't think those trends are going to go away once they've kind of gotten locked in. So it is increasingly important moving forward.
Absolutely. And talking about story, Bob, you mentioned for our second question on the Q&A, I'll quickly read the question, but you talked about how important it is for this industry to tell its story better. So it'd be great for you to expound on that a bit. The question is, the breed associations like Angus have done a great job of marketing and communications of single breed advantages to consumer. How do you see the greater digitization and higher quality animal production flowing through to the bottom line? And do you see groups like American Angus leveraging technologies like AgriWebb? As an industry, do we need to better market that data-driven approach advantage, or should we keep or should we group together with groups like American Angus to keep a unified voice?
Well, when I type back that we need to tell our story better, everybody on this panel will look at you and tell you that we are probably the most fragmented industry out there. We have the cow-calf side, we have the stocker, backgrounders, finish feeders, the packers, the retail. We have never gotten together as a whole to tell our story of what we produce as an industry. And even more so, who we produce for. Like I said earlier, we are in this industry to feed the world, and we do a hell of a job at it. How we tell our story of working together. How do we get to the point of aligning that pasture to plate? How do we get to the point where everybody in this industry is making money? That is the end goal. That is the target. And if we all work in the same direction, we can get there. But it's always been this guy against that guy, against that guy, against all of these guys. And we got to get over that. There's other protein industries out there that do a good job of telling their story. We have to get better, and we have to market what we do for a living day in and day out and tell that story better. One of the things that Tyson is going to do this summer, I believe it all starts at the ranch. And we're going to put film crews all over the US filming legacy ranches because we want them to have their story out there. And I think that's how it starts. I made this comment to our marketing group 5 years ago. It's not us. We tear stuff apart as a packer. It's not the retail. They have their built-in margin. The consumer is driving to understand our story, not only here in the US, but overseas as well. When we got back into business with Japan after the Christmas cow, consumer confidence was very low to US beef because we had not told our story, how we controlled what we are doing today, put our safeguards in place, our measures in place to capture, understand, and mitigate any issues of our industry. And we have to just do a better job. American Angus does a great job. Red Angus does a great job. Limousine Association, Charolais Association, everybody does a good job. We just need to do a better job of telling our story and selling what we do for a livelihood.
Absolutely. I think that came out a lot in that graph that Neville showed around particularly the younger generation, and their misinterpretation. I mean, nobody cares more about their animals than the ranchers that are running them. And so the fact that people aren't seeing that, to me, shows how that story needs to be told. And I love what you're talking about there, and getting out to those longer term ranchers and showing what it is like and what they do care and how they do operate. Absolutely. Excellent. Well, look, we're coming up to it. I think maybe one way to kind of close things out is, everyone wants to, closing a panel, we got to talk about the future. So, maybe some predictions. We've talked about a lot of how things are changing and how they have changed, and the opportunities. Bob has said so many times, the opportunities that are presenting themselves. What new opportunities do the three of you see, and where do you think? What are some predictions on the big transformations that are going to be happening as we look forward to the future, and how we can take advantage of those as well?
I think you look at the Asian markets in general. Over 800 million middle class people. They have to eat. I mean, the business is good right now, but it can always improve. And in that improvement, other countries will also jump on board. Asian markets have been fantastic. China's been ridiculous year over year, month over month sales. So there's huge opportunities. And eventually, once we get a solid track record of exporting to there, it's going to open more doors. And maybe that opening to more doors is premium product level. As I said, our company projected 10% growth over the next 5 years. It's been a heck of a ride. And believe me, I'm out there looking for cattle every day of the week, coast to coast, border to border. It's a domestic animal. I take a lot of pride in what our program states. I take a lot of integrity in what we do. So I can't stress leverage and opportunity enough.
I think to follow up on that, Bob says he's out there hunting for cattle, and that's exactly right. And everyone's hunting for very specific cattle, right? And so they become much more tied to specific programs and or businesses or marketing venues. And so I think, along with all this discussion we're having about consumers, ultimately, I think in this business, we're going to see more networking to provide those needs that, for example, Bob is looking for, that you have these aggregators that are networking producers and working together. And then I would say, lastly, on top of that, it's all going to have to be increasingly data-driven, and information becomes increasingly important in all of that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Lori, what about you? What do you think about the future of, for the industry, but also for SunFed? Anything exciting on the horizon?
Oh, we're continuing to grow and continuing to add certificates. So, and I think it's exactly to help. I mean, the market is extreme. It allows us a lot of options so that we can market our animals so that we can gain what we stick into them, because it isn't cheap to feed in California, and it's not going to be, we're looking at a drought. So for us, the more we can utilize, the better. And so, but we're growing, and we're on a mission to keep growing. So I know we've done a lot of growing since I've been here. So I think so for us, I guess, the more certificates we can add to our portfolio, the more opportunities we'll have to make sure we do get an ROI, because in an ever challenging environment, and it does, it goes back to, it validates what most of us are doing anyway. So.
Fantastic. There we go. More opportunities, more ROI. the world is changing, and you know,
Yeah.
we all want to make it easier for everyone to take advantage of that opportunity and to tell our story and to tell the story of the industry. Fantastic. All right. Well, perfect timing, right on the hour. So I think we'll start to draw things to a close. First of all, just wanted to really thank the panelists. Amazing to hear, you know, all your different perspectives. It was incredibly insightful, and thank you also to the audience for joining, for the questions that came through both before and during the panel. I know it sounds like there may have been a few questions that came in right there at the end that we didn't get a chance to jump on, but we'll look to get some answers out to people and follow up on that. So I'm going to quickly share my screen, pop something up here with a little bit of our details. Let's see, make sure this is, oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Where are we here? There we go. Okay. Can everyone see my screen now? Can everyone see that all right? There we go. Okay, so there's the contact details that are up for everyone. So please, you know, you can tweet or LinkedIn any of us to say hello and to ask more questions and stay in touch. And you know, for anyone who does want to learn, of course, I'm here with AgriWebb. If anyone does want to learn about AgriWebb and how we can help, you know, with tracking data to manage business better and also to, you know, take advantage of some of these programs, please reach out to me and reach out to us. Also, quick note, we'll be following up with a recording of the presentation via email for people who maybe didn't get to watch the whole thing or want to watch it again. And so please spread the word. Please send us any feedback. You know, we do these to add value to ranchers, and we want to make sure that we're doing good jobs. So please, I think there'll be a survey that goes out after. So please respond to that. Any suggestions for future topics, you know, follow-ups, other things that people want to hear about or talk about, please send them through. But yes, thanks again. Thanks again to our panelists, and thanks again to everyone in the audience.
Thank you, Kevin.
Fantastic.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate that, and I hope everybody has a great evening.
It was my pleasure to be involved. So thank you very much for everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.